Emerald Beam, Nighthawks. Chapter 2. Rachel waited for her husband to return from work. As chief editor at Channel 4, where Malcolm worked, Bob usually arrived home at 7, exhausted from the day. He kissed Rachel, now 6 months pregnant, who had prepared dinner. While doing the dishes, he told her he loved her, and when they headed to bed, Bob fell asleep almost instantly. The night air felt unusually still on Rachel's skin as she stepped onto the porch, the wooden boards cool beneath her bare feet. She noticed something in the distance approaching from the dark clouds. She struggled to focus on the object. It was blurry, lacking defined edges like a mirage. As it moved closer, growing larger, it hovered near her home. When the green beam appeared, it brought with it a scent like ozone after lightning. Then it washed over her from head to toe. Terror gripped her, but when she tried to scream, no sound emerged. The only thing she could hear at first was a low-frequency hum as she stood paralyzed, frozen in time like a statue. The paralysis felt like honey flowing through her veins, thick and sweet but terrifying in its totality. Inside her womb, the baby moved with deliberate purpose, each movement precise and alien. The beam's light painted everything in shades of emerald, while a high-pitched whine just beyond human hearing made her inner ears buzz uncomfortably. The green beam passed over her twice, head to toe and back again, before vanishing along with the craft. As the paralysis lifted, Rachel shook her head and walked inside as if nothing had happened, crawling into bed beside her sleeping husband. Rachel watched Bob as he slept, her hand resting on her transformed belly. The man who had once been just her loving, ordinary husband now slumbered peacefully beside her, unaware that their family had been chosen for something extraordinary. She thought about telling him about her encounter with the green light, but how could she explain something she barely understood herself? Instead, she traced the outline of his face in the darkness, wondering if he too would change, if their entire family was meant to be part of this cosmic transformation. The baby kicked. No, not kicked, moved with deliberate purpose, as if responding to her thoughts. The next morning, Malcolm woke up feeling wonderful for the first time in many years. He slept without interruption, hearing only the slight hum from his CPAP machine. After stretching and drinking a glass of water, he noticed something different in the bathroom mirror. He couldn't pinpoint what it was at first. A few gray hairs above his temples had vanished, and his eyebrows seemed darker. His once gray mustache had turned jet black. The wrinkles around his eyes had smoothed away, though in his morning haze, he barely recognized the young man who stared back. The reverse aging wasn't just physical. His soul felt lighter, unburdened by decades of cynicism and doubt. But with this second chance came responsibility. He thought of Mary, his ex-wife, and realized he no longer felt the bitter sting of betrayal. Instead, a profound gratitude washed over him. If she hadn't left, he might never have been alone in that tunnel when the orb appeared. Never to become part of the alien plan. Malcolm drove his old Ford pickup to the station and walked into the office of the chief engineer, Albert Thompson. Despite being 20 years younger, Albert commanded respect with his electrical engineering degree. This was his first stop in what promised to be a successful broadcast career. "About last night," Albert said, studying Malcolm's face.
"I see Wi-Fi is back up and transmitter signals are stronger than ever. Whatever you did out there worked, maybe too well. Now explain that bright green beacon."
Malcolm's heart sank. He'd hoped somehow no one would notice, but of course they would. People had already called the station at sunrise, reporting the ethereal green glow high above the mountains. He couldn't talk about his close encounter with the orb. They'd think him crazy, maybe even lock him up. So he did what anyone would do. He played dumb.
"Boss, I don't know what you're talking about,"
Malcolm said carefully.
"I went up there to change the red beacon like you told me, then did all the work inside the shack. The transmitter, Wi-Fi calibrations, everything on your checklist. I didn't get home until 3 a.m. Quite frankly, I'm exhausted."
"Tell you what, let's take a ride out there, and I'll give you the rest of the day off when we get back. You've done enough, but I have to see this green light pulse up close."
They gathered their tools and drove 30 miles to the antenna shack. Albert brought extra tools and meters. Following safety protocols, only one person could climb at a time due to weight limitations. Albert made the ascent while Malcolm waited at the base, watching his boss climb the 1,000-foot tower. Malcolm observed as Albert reached the glowing green beacon. He then entered the shack to check some equipment and wait for Albert to finish his testing. The air in the transmitter shack changed subtly as Malcolm worked, growing inexplicably warmer despite the night's chill. A faint scent like morning dew filled the space. Through the window, peculiar ribbons of light danced across the mountainside. Not the harsh green of the mysterious transmitter, but something softer, more ethereal. From Albert's position, he could feel the unit wasn't warm or cold and emitted no sound. The strange, elongated light green metallic object contained some internal power source. Up close, its glow seemed dimmer than expected, though from a distance it shone like a star. He was struck by its otherworldly geometry. It wasn't round, square, or even hexagonal. The object had 5 perfectly symmetrical sides, each face a slightly different shade of light green that seemed to shift as he moved around it. Tapping it with his wrench produced a hollow metallic echo, but the sound felt wrong somehow, as if it were coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. Albert pulled out his tablet, fingers flying across the screen as he documented his observations. The apparatus's symmetry wasn't just aesthetic. It followed the golden ratio precisely, its 5-sided geometry maintaining perfect proportions at every scale. When he aimed his spectral analyzer at it, the readings defied known physics. The energy signature seemed to exist in multiple frequency bands simultaneously, like an advanced particle in superposition. The implications made his advanced thinking real. This wasn't just advanced technology. It was technology that operated outside the conventional laws of physics. The unknown equipment defied conventional engineering. There were no visible electronics, no LEDs, no serial numbers, not even the slightest scratch on its surface. Without its ethereal glow, it might have been mistaken for an elaborate piece from some exotic erector set, perhaps a forgotten prop from a science fiction film. Measuring roughly 14 inches in length, its surface beckoned to be touched. Albert removed his glove, running his fingers along its exterior. The material was smooth, devoid of any imperfections or manufacturing marks. No seams, no joints, no rough edges, just an unbroken surface that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The glow pulsed almost imperceptibly, like a sleeping creature's breath. But the strange apparatus itself remained silent. Only after several minutes of examination did Albert finally turn his attention to the actual maintenance work he'd climbed up to perform. Albert touched the green rod through his glove, attempting to shake it. The clamps holding it in place seemed impossibly secure. He tried a crescent wrench on the 1/2-inch nut, but it wouldn't budge. Switching to a socket wrench, he watched in disbelief as the metal stripped away like butter. Even violently shaking, the unit produced no movement. The strange electronic emitter appeared welded in place. After taking some iPhone photos and checking radiation levels with his Geiger counter app, which showed nothing unusual, he began his descent. Back on the ground, Albert shook his head as he faced Malcolm.
Okay, I don't understand what this thing is, but I recognize that clamp as one of ours. Now you're going to tell me what really happened last night, because this is beyond bizarre.
Malcolm stared at his boss, his head racing. There was no reasonable explanation, no way to make this sound normal. He knew Albert was too intelligent to buy a lie. Finally, humbling himself, he let the truth flow.
Listen, boss. If I tell you the truth, you've got to promise not to judge me or think I'm crazy. What I'm about to say will sound unbelievable, but it's exactly how it went down.
Malcolm recounted everything. The drive to the shack, his work inside, the calibration, and then the manifestation. He described the tunnel encounter with the green orb, the installation of the strange equipment, and his confusion about the aircraft's appearance. He connected the dots between the installation and the radio announcement about the vanishing tornadoes, the temperature fluctuations, and the weather effects. Albert sat dumbfounded during the drive back. At the station, they shared the story with their chief editor, news director, and a reporter who began crafting the story. They decided to present it as an unexplained phenomenon, knowing they risked criticism for running a story involving their own broadcast engineer. After heated debate about positioning, they determined it was definitely newsworthy. The weather effects and dissipated tornadoes demanded explanation. They had an inside scoop through their own employee, and they intended to use it. Malcolm stood at the tower's base, his reversed aging making him feel like a stranger in his own skin. Every mirror had reflected a younger man, but his soul felt ancient, weighted with knowledge no human was meant to bear. He wondered if this was how Moses felt after seeing the burning bush. Forever changed by an encounter that was beyond human comprehension.
Tonight on Channel 4, we bring you an exclusive story featuring our broadcast engineer and his extraordinary close encounter with an otherworldly spacecraft and mysterious instructions to install what appears to be an alien transmitter. Here's our reporter on site, Alexandra Alex Summers, with more details.
Reginald, I'm standing in front of the broadcast shack at the base of our 1,000-foot Channel 4 tower where Malcolm Davis, our broadcasting engineer, was instructed by an unknown entity to install a strange piece of equipment. The object now sits atop the tower, as you can see, emitting an eerie green pulsating light. No one knows its purpose or function, but we've confirmed it's having remarkable effects on local weather patterns. Multiple tornadoes have dissipated, and strange atmospheric phenomena have been reported throughout the Asheville area. Thunderstorms vanish mysteriously, and witnesses describe inexplicable events occurring since its installation. Let's hear from Malcolm Davis himself about this extraordinary experience.
Malcolm recounted his encounter in the tunnel and his return to the station, sharing his perspective on following the unknown entity's instructions.
I was terrified, absolutely terrified. Though it didn't speak audibly, I heard its instructions clearly in my thoughts. It simply dropped the unit at my feet, and somehow, I instantly understood what it wanted. The entity itself was unlike anything I've ever seen. No face, no distinguishable features, just a luminescent green mass hovering above the ground. Behind it was what I assumed to be some type of spacecraft, though it was difficult to make out. The craft appeared distorted, as if wrapped in some kind of advanced cloaking technology that bent light around it. Trying to look directly at it was like peering through the bottom of a Coke bottle. Everything was warped and unclear. After I completed the installation and descended the tower, it simply stated, "You did well," and vanished. The strangest part, when I looked in the mirror this morning, I noticed my previously gray hair and mustache had turned jet black. I can't explain it, but I feel better than I have in years.
Reginald, this is clearly just the beginning of an extraordinary story. We'll continue monitoring developments closely, with plans to deploy drones for detailed aerial footage of the beacon in the coming days. Our meteorology team will be tracking any unusual weather patterns, and we'll bring you regular updates as this situation unfolds. Back to you in the studio.
After the broadcast, Bob's journalistic instincts wouldn't let him rest. He immediately arranged a meeting with the news director, followed by a strategy session with Alexandra the next day. The two met to plan their coverage, with Bob taking the lead on shaping the narrative.
The military presence is inevitable. They'll be here within hours.
Bob explained, his voice carrying the weight of experience.
We need to secure interviews with their personnel, and they'll likely bring in psychiatrists, meteorologists, and various scientific experts.
Bob paused, considering their resources.
Take Harold with you. He's your best cameraman and editor. You'll need him for the drone footage and additional stand-ups near the antenna shack. We should get fresh sound bites from the mayor, too. I'll handle setting up the interviews with NCU professors.
The seasoned news producer knew this story could be career-defining. More importantly, he sensed it was just the beginning of something far more significant than anyone could imagine. In the coming days, as military vehicles began rolling into town and strange lights continued pulsing above the mountains, Bob's instincts would prove eerily accurate. Find out what lies ahead for the people of Asheville, North Carolina. Nighthawks, Battle for the Future of Humanity, by John D. Bertucci, now available on Amazon.